This is the Open University.
I really wrestle with the dilemma in these broadcasts, these narrowcasts, because I wonder whether to just tell you about my adventures out there in the world, usually in Paris and other parts of Europe, or whether to, report the controversies of the day and get all topical and sort of Twitter feedy. And I really plump mostly for the latter these days. I think we don't live in the era of opinion, but the era of the onion. And pungency and smell and sensual data is what we crave rather than, people's opinions, which are so divisive and so horrific these days. But of course it's compelling. Emotionally it's compelling, but I don't need the ratings. I don't chase ratings, either in my music or my video, my vlogs. So I'm back in Berlin after just a month. Really, I was in the high peak of the summer, which for me is seeing the art school degree shows and things like that, and the guilty biennials. We had a trifecta of those this year because we had Venice, which was mostly prioritizing women artists. We then had Documenta, which was prioritizing the global south. And we had a Berlin biennial curated by Kader Attia, an artist very important for me because he influenced my 2017 album, Pillikop. And he wanted to sharpen the conscience of the already guilty biennial trotting elite, which is me, basically, and people a bit like me. We already are very guilty. We feel very guilty for everything we've done, everything our ancestors have done, the sins of the fathers are visited on the sons and the daughters. But does it make great art? Well, I think probably most people going to art biennials are already anti-war and anti-racist. I would imagine so. Maybe they need to be pushed a little bit further, but maybe it's like the wind and the sun. I always think of this of Aesop's fable that, if you want to change people's behavior, don't do it with wind and with force. Do it with seduction. Do it with the sun. The traveller takes off his coat when the sun shines. And I would like a bit more sun to be shining in the art world, but maybe because it's not shining out there in the big old world itself, maybe that's asking too much, and asking artists to be focused on a happier future. Maybe it's like saying we should only have the good time news, we should only listen to positive things or try to focus on positive things when we look at politicians. And God knows we don't do that, and quite rightly so. So, of course, as artists we have a responsibility to reflect the world. It's just a shame that the world is so nocturnal at the moment. So, in order to escape from all this kind of controversy, which is tedious, and it's being forced under your nose and all sorts of other media streams, what I like to do is go and look at my personal photo stream and talk you through pictures that are interesting to me. So that's what I'm going to do from now on, without further ado. Subvertising, that's subversive advertising, and that's a show I saw in Berlin a month or so ago at the Kunstraum Kreuzberg in the Botanian Centre, sort of a witty take on artists who have subverted commercial messages. And this one, Shell, for instance, shows how oil companies are turning the earth into a hell. Big energy. This is a shop called Vu store in Kreuzberg also, where they have one of my favourite luxury clothes brands, which is Acne Studios. Just opened a big new store in Paris. And as you can see, even in a rather chic coffee-serving fashion store like that, where they have art magazines talking about politics and power. So it's all part of the aesthetic fabric, I guess. This is where I really wonder, if it's just a kind of guilt chic which is going on, or activism chic. But still, there are actual. This was just a shot of an artist. Who is that? Some activism banners for courage, which are on London bus stops there. The Nord Bahnhof with some. I like it when Berlin goes into summer mode, and it gets even more outrageously slow and hedonistic than usual. These are some tangerine pants, which I bought. Are they tangerine? Not really sure. So I then was called to Provence. Oh, the call of duty, you know, to go and join my girlfriend's family in Provence. This is all the art school stuff, which I spoke about before. And so donning a white suit, this actually looks like rather a smart white suit, but the trousers are Japanese carpenter trousers from a uniform store in Osaka. The jacket I found in Milan on a stall for 50 cents. They were selling all this great uniform stuff for 50 cents a piece, and Naomi got a wonderful pink dress as well, which makes her look like my nurse, as if she's wheeling me around Paris like a nurse. I'm sure there's an image of that somewhere up here. But anyway, we'll get to that. So I headed off to Provence, and I was a bit worried about how this was going to go. This is my first family holiday. First of all, I'm not really into the idea of holidays. Although I look as if I'm dressed for a permanent holiday, which I kind of am, they're always in cities. And going off to the countryside, especially Provence, it's something I hadn't done since 1985, when my mother and her husband dragged me off to Provence, and I was in a gîte in the countryside reading Nabokov. I think I was reading The Real Life of Sebastian Knight at the time. My brother was there too. And I can't really slow down to that extent, and I start having withdrawal symptoms from culture. But actually, it turned out we did lots of interesting things. That's the Berlin Biennial graphics, by the way, which I kind of thought was more interesting than some of the content of the show itself. It's sort of architectural layouts. The show itself was very much investigative art, on the model of forensic architecture. So perhaps they're referring with this architectural layout design to forensic architecture, the art group from Britain who just do investigations into crimes of governments, really, crimes of powerful entities. That's an interesting image of my dad in 1969 in Athens. A selfie, actually, I've worked out, because he's just placed his camera on a ledge in Syntagma Square in Athens to photograph himself looking very smart. You can almost see him like holding a James Bond gun or something. You could Photoshop that in. He's quite James Bondy in a way. He went out to Greece a couple of months before the rest of us did. We moved there as a family in 1969. And that's just something in which I'd brought in a box of slides back from Edinburgh when I was there. This was an amazing thing. And I went towards Provence on trains via Basel. And this is this amazing thing where people get an inflatable cushion and then float down the river, which is the Rhine at Basel. This was an amazing evening light as the sun dipped under the clouds. And each of those pinpricks there is a person floating down the river safely, you know, with their possessions in a Ziploc bag, which is waterproof. Really rather joyful. Shows the river must be very clean as well. This is also Basel, a tram under the conference centre. This is Basel Station. I love these images of the Alps, even although in Basel you're essentially in, Germany and France and Switzerland, so you don't really see the Alps yet, but you get intimations of them. Basel again. I love traveling by train, and I love going south in summer. I love hot weather. Here, everything's shut though. It kind of freaks me out how everybody in France takes collectively a month off through the whole of August, and things are just closed. So here you have congé annuel, the annual holidays, reopening on Tuesday, the 23rd of August. So that total close down, it's almost like, some kind of post-apocalyptic sense where the heat is all you can think about. And luckily people are still selling drinks and you can still visit churches and things like that. If you're in a town, we were in a place called Mauriès. Here I am back with Naomi in the gîte which they'd rented. It was actually in a small town, and Eric Cantona was living pretty much next door. Naomi's dad had spoken to Eric Cantona in a car park. He has his house on the main street in Mauriès. Not a particularly glamorous town. I think the next one along is it's called Saint-Jean something. is the glamorous one, where apparently Charlotte Gainsbourg has a house and was there in residence while we were there. We didn't see her. We did see Cantona from the car. I didn't wave at him. I'm not a huge Cantona fan. Apparently Liam Gallagher is, though, because Cantona appears as the king in a Liam Gallagher video. Somebody I am a big fan of, though, is this guy, Jean Cocteau, who in his last film is kind of self-requiem, self-eulogy, elegy rather, not eulogy. Oh, it's easy to get those mixed up, isn't it? Incarnated a character in a location which I suddenly recognized because we went to this place, which is an old stone quarry. It's going to say on the screen what this place is called. There's a fortress on a hill, and next to it is this old stone quarry, and I immediately recognized it as the place which I'd used in my video, Masks of Bedco, where Cocteau's walking down a road in the countryside, and he sees a man, or he sees a horse, a large, tall, black figure in the guise of a horse walking, and he follows him to a gypsy encampment. And this was all very resonant because my mother-in-law, my girlfriend's mother anyway, is a gypsy, and although there wasn't a gypsy camp in this old stone quarry, what there is now is this amazing son et lumière display, sound and light, amazing video projections, this time celebrating the history of Venice, and also Yves Klein, who I have connections with because I'm in the Derek Jarman's final film Blue, about going blind, has a Mamas song in it. I put some lyrics about being a cocksucking lesbian man, which Derek had written to music, and that's in that film. So here it is, all soaked in blue, part of the Yves Klein display. Very spectacular because you're in this cavernous space, labyrinthine and cavernous, and then you get these projections which transform the space. I loved it. I loved this display. And that's the view from the top of the fortress. Sort of reminded me of Joy Division's Unknown Pleasures, actually, this succession of ranges. And so from slightly dreading the isolation of this holiday, I ended up really enjoying it because we went to all these places. This is a seaside town associated with gypsies and known for a black Saint Sarah, who's the patron, the saint of gypsies, actually. And so we went to pay our homage to her in one of the churches there. This is the Bar of the Poets. And another thing we did, we also went to this bullfight. These days, of course, they don't have the balls to do real bullfights. What they do is running away from the bulls without hurting them. So you get these young men, lusty young men who are from the town, running away from very angry bulls and just jumping over a fence to the safety of a kind of rail they hang from like curtains. And it's nice to, I would just boycott an actual bull ring where you saw bulls being massacred. But that's because I'm a coward and hate the sight of blood. So this was one of the things that Mourias is famous for. This only €5 to get in as well. We left before the end, though, because it was a little bit repetitive. No dramatic structure because there was no death involved, I guess. This is Naomi playing Sadako, rising out of the well, which was in the courtyard. And here we are in Arles. Arles, nearby, a very interesting town where they had the Arles Rencontre Arles, which is a photography exhibition. And I spoke to the author of this photograph of David Bowie, who's attending the premiere of a film with his chauffeur. There's Arthur, the chauffeur. And here's Jordan, the punkette. And Bowie is affecting to be shocked by Jordan's outfit. But I spoke to the photographer and said, you took that picture of David Bowie, didn't you? And he didn't seem very impressed. He'd taken pictures of plane crashes and all sorts of things. And this was just an assignment he'd been sent on. But you got a good one of Bowie there. Yeah, we went and slid down slides made by Carsten Holler. I actually injured my elbow by trying to use it as a brake on the side of this metal slide. This is not this slide, but it goes down the same space inside this rather amazing building. This is the arenas of Arles, which are a Roman period arena, rather like the Colosseum at Rome. I think I'd been there like decades ago. and various photographs from the Arles photographic exhibitions. So I really had fun at that in Arles. Bullfighting, the municipal douches, and here we are back in just country walks and things. Actually, I could see the point of having August off. I, who have every month off essentially, except the month when I'm making my album. Here we are back in Paris, and what we do in Paris is we thrift, we buy second-hand clothes, and this is us at Relique, our favourite place, which the main shop in Relique was also taking an August break, but they have pop-ups in department stores which we could go to and at least look at the clothes, because in the department stores they're like triple the price they are in other places. But we just traipse around Paris and look at the way other people are dressed, especially people in like the 20th arrondissement, for instance, up the hill in Belleville, whatever. We draw a lot of energy from Paris's vibrancy, basically. Vaginas displayed on the walls here. This is what you want to see, rather than images of torture, just images of underrepresented human organs. I think that's the future. Maybe art biennials in future can be just images of genitalia. I wouldn't say no to that. This is a new clothes shop which has an interesting. You can tell that this is going to go out of business within a year or so, because it has too interesting a look and it's too peaceful, unfortunately. Although it does show people in uniform, so perhaps this is the future. We're all going to live in a very uniformed. Well, we already do, because everyone's basically wearing Adidas and Nike. This is someone who's not, though. He's wearing a. This guy, I don't know if he's had plastic surgery. He's very looks rather a little bit too juicy to be true, but. This is one of our favourite cafes in Paris. It was kind of like a catwalk. What is that street called? Let me just see if I can zoom in. The Rue de... It's where OFR is. It should be called Rue OFR, because OFR Bookshop is there. And the cafe is called I/O, in/out, I guess, stands for. And this guy, I thought he was... although he's all in black, which is a little bit tedious, I thought he was rocking it rather well. Looks like a sort of skinny tie. New wave, post-punk, I don't know, electro musician. Meanwhile, this is what I look like. In another exhibition. And we lead the life of Riley really in Paris. This is Yamcha, which does excellent bubble teas. They're not really bubble teas. They've evolved beyond what you might call bubble tea, the industrial kind of bubble tea. This is outside. Oh, that's the pink dress I was telling you about, which cost 50 cents. Uniform. I quite like this guy's sandals. I think he was an Australian. Most of the people in these sort of third wave cafes in Paris are English speakers. This is outside Cotte, which is the best. I think it's the best of the Paris cafes. We go as often as we can reasonably be seen to. And always have a bit of a chat with the guys running Cotte. And it's just us having an endless succession of nice drinks, none of which are alcoholic. We used to drink Aperol spritzes and things like that, but now we just drink bubble teas and coffees. Although both of us can't really take more than one coffee a day, so that does thankfully limit the intake a little bit. So this is all just things, nice things I've seen in Paris. And Paris is an eternal biennial, really. It's a place where I can feel as if the city itself were proposing itself as its own ideal, which I suppose it is. A lot of mirrors in Paris as well. It's a place where you're allowed to be narcissistic, which, suits me fine. I've probably encouraged Naomi to be... Well, I think we're all secretly quite narcissistic. I think there's nothing wrong with that. I've done a video before about why it's okay to be a narcissist. This is a new place we discovered. I think it's called Sandy or Bendy. Bendy? Anyway, name on screen. Run by a Japanese man, very well groomed and manicured, who makes very good coffee and sando, Japanese sandwiches. Although I think he's doing that a bit less, and what he does is onigiri. Excellent onigiri. That's Jacques Derrida, a new book. Well, it's a new publication, but it's based on some essays from about 1962. To think is to say no. Negation. That's what we were talking about last time, isn't it? This is some mushrooms in the Korean Ace Mart on the Rue Sainte-Anne. Paris, of course, is a global microcosm, and that's one thing I particularly like about it. Beautiful weather this August. That's inside Yumcha, the sommeliers of bubble tea. Excellent. I always have the umai there. This is our local Chinese supermarket. They reorganized their shelves and did this ultra simple, brutalist kind of polystyrene presentation. This reminds me, there's a Japanese artist in New York who was working with polystyrene forms a lot. I forget his name. His name will appear on the screen here. And this whole thing. This is a Makina 67, which is a bellows medium format camera, which I'm particularly attracted to. I wouldn't actually buy one until they invent a viable digital film which uses all the same focal lengths and things. I wouldn't actually go back to analog cameras, retro cameras. I love how they look, but they're a bit heavy. I do rely on my iPhone a lot because it's so light and it's so good, algorithmically. It's getting this background, for instance, dropping out of focus. That's done artificially. It's done algorithmically. It's not what you would have done with a lens and with depth of field knowledge in the old days with cameras. You do now with an algorithm which takes two different pictures and then melds them and makes its own calculation of what's in the background and what's in the foreground. It works here, but in other cases, I rather like how it doesn't work. I'm a bit of a connoisseur of technology when it's in the interesting phase of having an idea of something it wants to do, but not quite succeeding in doing it. And so a lot of my images of flower, for instance, this one, images of plants and things, what I really like is the fact that the algorithm is really struggling to decide what should be in focus and what shouldn't. So it kind of works here, although there's moments when some things which are close to you and should be in focus are actually out of focus. There's probably other ones where that's happening. I play with that. I like, this one, for instance. You can see the detail beginning to, around the edges of the leaves. Why is that leaf going out of focus there? It doesn't really make sense, but I rather like that. That will mark, as we look back historically at photography in this era, we'll think that was one of the artifacts, one of the glitch artifacts of this era. Upcycling, second-hand and vintage, the three big words for us in Paris. It is it's a very wonderful life, but it's also it's very vital in Paris because there are people like these are Eritreans or Ethiopians. I think they're Ethiopians because I saw the same community in Athens. And I learned all about what the signification of the veils was when they're over one shoulder, they mean one thing, and over another shoulder, another thing, that kind of stuff. That's also in another of these videos. And this is something I also like photographing a lot in Paris, is these rather beautiful ripped posters which you see, where here you have, looks like a sort of wrestling mask character who's then superimposed on a gay sex poster. Both of them are sort of cute and rather beautifully drawn. Protect ourselves, protect all our loves, AIDS action, together against AIDS. So that might have been quite an old AIDS action advert, and then quite an old wrestling poster, and they've just somehow been concatenated. They've been assembled by chance, by the chance act of violence of ripping across them. So often I find this kind of happy accident in Paris on the billboards. And happy accidents are really sort of operative term for. We sort of have various Paris days. We've got it down to the art of saying, are we going to have day 6 or day 7 or day 8? And it revolves usually around a particular arrondissement and a particular cafe, and but always around looking at secondhand garments. And who knows, we might develop this into a business, because I think we have quite a good eye for this outfit, for instance. I think is very successful. This is just It's a shirt which cost €1 on a market stall, and it's a skirt from, where is that skirt from? It might be from Emmaus, I think that. It's a pleated 80s pastel shaded, rather lurid pastel shaded skirt. And here you have again the selective focus, the algorithmic narrow depth of field, which has been done rather well here. Some of those blades of grass probably shouldn't be blurred, but in the background you see a church, and this is the near the mairie of the 12th arrondissement. And that's a little beast which Clara Victoria has put on a fire extinguisher and relic. That's actually the inside of my bag, which was taken by accident. So sometimes the camera takes its own images, and there's a rather beautiful image of mountains, volcanoes possibly, in a pink pink landscape. Totally random, triggered. There's a kind of flying saucer arriving onto Parisian post boxes. And that's some... this is scavenged from the €5 bin in Relique, these pink pants, which are... I don't know if I have the guts to wear them as is, actually, but the shirt I am wearing a lot. I like this shirt, kind of early 60s, possibly, or 1950s pattern on the shirt there. And this is a man, his shop is still there with all these dead dolls piled up, looking a bit like a Holocaust of some kind. He's a toy maker. It reminded me of my song Ventriloquists and Dolls. He's a rather sinister toy maker who must have died. His dolls are all still there. The shop has never been released or repurposed, and you can peek through the window. This is, again, I think it's in the 12th, towards Ménilmontant, and I find it fascinating. I've taken pictures many times passing that shop. Here's an exhibition featuring a suit of armor. Chinese suit of armor, is it? I'm not sure. Japanese, possibly. This is a 2022 novel. I should have bought this, actually. It looked really interesting. A sort of surreal novel called The Nudes of Hersangen, which is a town near Belgium, a North French town, Isabelle d'Angy. It's about a surreal kind of town where people walk nude. And this is Rue David Bowie, which is in Paris, just across the Seine in the 13th arrondissement. I'd seen it on a map, or Noemi saw it on a map, and said we have to check it out. So we went there, and it was very disappointing because it's just this kind of alley in a new area. They've redeveloped the area around the Gare d'Austerlitz and built these rather characterless buildings on these streets, which are often cul-de-sacs. This one, Rue David Bowie, is a cul-de-sac. It's got no street signs. Presumably people would have stolen the blue plaque if they had put Rue David Bowie there. So it doesn't say Rue David Bowie anywhere that I could see. And, the pavement runs out, and then there's just these sort of ugly bits of oil spill and asphalt everywhere. It's really an insult to Bowie's memory. But it's not as if there was a campaign to make a David Bowie street. They've just used a lot of mostly women photographers' names to name the streets in this area. And we're promised that it will become a vibrant and interesting area, which is possible because, nearby they have another entirely new area of Paris, which is around the Bibliothèque Mitterrand, which is actually a very pleasant area now and a good place to hang out. And so it shows that Paris can, despite what Tati predicted when he made Playtime, Paris can modernize and still be Paris. Here we are eating at Tricotin, which is in the 13th arrondissement. 13th is a great place to visit because you can sort of imagine in a against nature, Wismont kind of way, you can imagine that you've taken a trip somewhere without actually leaving Paris. So this is a new cafe in the 13th. I think it's called Collet. And these are the buildings of the 13th, which are delightfully brutalist. And in fact, my friend Gilles has just bought a new flat in one of the towers of the Olympiade. I think he's moving in next month. He's currently in rented in-between accommodation, but he's going to take his place on the 22nd floor, somewhere up there, in one of these tower blocks. So I'm very jealous. That's kind of one of the places I imagined. In fact, I wrote about it in a song for Kihimi Kari called 1020th Century Chairs. Moving up to Chinatown, the 23rd floor of a building, looking up because I'm scared of looking down, something like that. Very expensive service charges, though, because you have to pay for the NAP, what's called the NAP, which is the terraces with supermarkets and things. You have to pay quite hefty service fee, which is almost as much as rent would be on a monthly basis. Just various things. Again, my fetish for analog cameras. This is probably the analog camera I'd be most tempted to own as a Nikon F. I think these ones don't require batteries, so they're purely mechanical, which means that they will always last. Of course, it's technology. As technology gets more sophisticated, there's more stuff that can break down or stuff that can't be replicated and maintained, so you can't maintain the cameras anymore. This is from inside one of the Acne Studios stores. I think they're a Swedish fashion company, Acne, and I really like a lot of their clothes. Also, this is their sort of approach to the artwork in the store is quite daring. And anti-racist. Is it anti-racist? Possibly. This is us in another new cafe place. It's called White, and it doesn't have any seats at all. As you can see, it's a very tiny space, but they've made it feel bigger by putting a mirror on the roof, and you can take away coffee to the nearby Place des Vosges. This is OFR Seoul. OFR has bought up the contents of a very venerable old image bookshop, which is called, L'Imagerie, no, not L'Imagerie, L'Illusionniste, something like that. It was a place I'd gone with Kihimi Kari in the 90s to do a photo shoot for a magazine called Barfout. They did like 20 pages of photographs of Kihimi and her collaborators walking around Paris. OFR, which is run by an eccentric old sort of couple of art lovers, sort of weird empire of art bookstores, which tried to open in Tokyo, tried to open in London, wasn't there in either of those places very long, closed again. And now they've reduced back down to just having the shop in Paris, which is mainly kept afloat by Korean girls buying baseball caps and tote bags marked with their brand. And there's a branch in Seoul, so this is them in the Paris shop selling one of the Seoul books, and also selling those the excess stock from the Illusionist bookshop. It's not the Illusionist, what's it called? I forget. Books, second-hand books, sterilized for your security, and happiness comes from America. Very much not the case, I think. The Society of Scent. This is a perfume shop, as you might imagine, quite close to Relique, which is quite close to République. And here's again OFR. This is really just a collection of old Purple magazine. This is Purple, which was a great fashion magazine. I'm not sure if it's still running, actually, Purple. Is it? I think it is. Maybe it is. So OFR and Purple, both examples of kind of 90s originated Paris elegance and creativity. Here I am. We're coming back up to the future. This was earlier this week. I was in the Gare de l'Est, wearing that shirt again, and my pillowcase bag, which Naomi actually made from a pillowcase, literally, heading back to Germany, because I just decided to come back and try my hand at some music, possibly. Do one of those EPs. Like last year I did orchestras during this time period and slotted it onto my 2022 album, Smudger. So I headed off to Frankfurt, and I always break my trip somewhere halfway between Paris and Berlin, because it's quite a long trip, and I'm getting on in years. I don't like to be stressed by 8-hour train trips, but I do like to stay on the train. Here's another example of that selective focus. Not quite working, but not working in an interesting way. This is, of course, I mean, I should probably do a whole talk about DALI, image interpolation software, image interpretation software, really, and the future of AI and in songwriting and all the rest of it. But I can't be bothered, frankly. You know, it's there, it's coming, it's frightening, it's wonderful. Get used to it. I would love to. As you know, there was a song, Night Clinic, on my current album, which used AI actually, as part of the songwriting process. Maybe that's what I should start playing around with, you know. Now I'm back here to work on music. Maybe I should... Yeah, that's a good idea.
Open University.